voice of Texas, AM 700 KSEV, honored beyond all words and measure that you're with us. And you know what? I got some great news yesterday about the program and how we're resonating out there. And I can't thank you guys enough, first off, for spreading the word about the Salcedo Show and AM 700 KSEV. And it's showing up. We are making some and strides beyond my wildest imagination, I got to say. And all the credit goes to you guys for being here. Hopefully we're putting on a decent enough show where you find yourself informed. One of the bits of information that came across my desk is that yesterday a federal judge threw out a lawsuit filed by our Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He was trying to suspend the resettlement of Syrian refugees here in Texas, and for good reason, because Team Obama has admitted that they can't properly vet them to make sure they're not terrorists. Let me talk more about this with Byron Henry. He's an appellate law expert with the law firm Scheef Stone, L.L.P. in Dallas, Fort Worth. Hello, sir. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Great to be with you, Chris.
Great to have you back. Look, this is disturbing to me because what this judge did by throwing out this case, and I'm going to ask you on what basis he threw it out, but to me it says that a federal judge says that even if an administration is admitting folks that they have already admitted they can't vet, that the states just have to shut up and take it, and that we are put in danger by the practices of the federal government and we have no say. So, number one, address that point and then tell me why the judge threw this out.
Well, first of all, the suit was based on the Refugee Act, which is basically the federal government's way of resettling and dealing with independent contractors and private organizations to resettle refugees in the United States. And it's undoubtedly a federal issue. But Congress was wise, and the President signed the law that said that states were supposed to be consulted with on a regular basis with respect to these resettlements. And Texas' lawsuit was simply based on the fact that this is in the law, and therefore what we need is we just need a seat at the table. We need to know who these people are, how they were vetted, and where you're putting them. And as, of course, it's a sovereign state, Texas thought it was at least entitled to that information pursuant to what the law said. So it sounds like common sense. It sounds like the federal government wanted to give the states its due, treat it as a sovereign, then it would provide this information and consult with the states. The problem was is that Texas wasn't getting the information it thought it was required, so it filed this lawsuit. Now the judge that threw it out was an appointee of George W. Bush, a very solid, conservative, smart judge, and all he said was, it's not that the states aren't entitled to this information under the law, but Congress didn't give states the right to sue the federal government because, as you know, without getting into the legal weeds, suing sovereign governments like the federal government or a state government, you got to jump through a lot of hoops. So all the judge did is very methodically and plodding along in an opinion say that the state doesn't have a private right to sue. It didn't say it was not a good idea to provide this information. It didn't say that the federal government should not provide this information. It just said you can't sue the federal government. And then there was also a private organization involved that the state is entitled to records, but the state is only entitled to the records of these individuals after they're settled. So what the court said was, you're too early on this. After they're settled, you can sue the private organization for the records to see who these people are and what services you're providing. So the state still has some avenues to get some information on these refugees, but one avenue they do not have is to sue the federal government to make them let Texas have a seat at the table, or any other state for that matter, to find out where these people are going and who they are.
Well, and the problem with this is that we have a federal government right now that just last year allowed nearly 500,000 individuals to basically overstay their visas, and the government loses track of them, and they're never tracked down. I mean, out of 500,000, 2,000 have been tracked down and deported because they overstayed their visas. That is a losing proposition. The competency or the willingness of the federal government to track these individuals is not there. And so once they're settled, it might be too late if these individuals happen to be ISIS or Boko Haram or Al-Qaeda or one of these or Al-Nusra Front or one of these terrorist organizations who have already said they are seeking to infiltrate the United States inside of these refugee streams.
Exactly, and this just goes back to a larger problem, especially with this administration Republican, Democratic presidents alike, the difference between a conservative president and other administrations, regardless of party, is that they understand that the states in this country are sovereigns and not just counties of the federal government. And so if you have a president, even going back to Bill Clinton, who had a lot of programs in which he worked with Congress to send money back to the states in a block grant format, for instance, and allow states to handle a lot of the things the federal government should not be handling, this administration consistently treats the states as the stepchildren or without any rights with respect to the federal government, and therefore common sense policies such as calling up the governor of another state and saying, hey, we're bringing 1,000 refugees from a Islamic country to your, and to settle in one of these towns and giving you fair warning, that just doesn't even dawn on them. They're like, oh, I didn't even know that was in the act, that we had to let the states know, for goodness sake, that we're bringing, refugees from all over the world and settling them in your state at a time when terrorism is on the rise and these shootings are occurring, and we can't guarantee even who these people are. So that's the real problem, is a disdain for the structure of government under the Constitution, which would require the federal government to work with states on matters of security such as this.
Byron Henry is our guest right now, appellate law expert with the law firm Scheef Stone in Dallas, Texas. So everybody out there screaming at the radio, what's our recourse? What other recourse do we have, or are we just ducks? Pluck us because our federal government says, as they have typically under President Obama, we're the government, screw you, you can't do anything to stand in our way.
Well, and the problem is that immigration, whether you like it or not, is a federal issue. It's constitutionally a federal issue. So a constitutional conservative such as you would say, yes, the federal government should be handling this, but they should be handling it correctly. And we live in these things have consequences. You elect an executive of a branch that controls every agency in the entire federal government, and you end up with trickle-down policies into those agencies, whether it's the Civil Rights Division, whether it's EEOC, or any other division that will either respect the Constitution and the rule of law, or they will not. And so from the immigration orders that were put out to these resettlements without working with states, the list just goes on. And the problem is that people don't realize until they get into a term, oh, really, the president can do that? Oh, really, we're subjecting ourselves to that? And that's something people need to think about before they go to the polls and stay home because they're, upset that their candidate didn't get the nomination.
I think he's talking to Roy. Thank you very much. Byron Henry, everybody. He is an appellate law expert with the law firm Scheef Stone, L.L.P. in Dallas, Texas. Sir, appreciate you being here on the Chris Salcedo Show.
Anytime.
All right, buddy. Thank you.